Hey guys, this is Mike from Epium, and today I'm going to show you a somewhat difficult composite. It's going to be me flying up the stairs in kind of a Superman pose. Yeah, random, I know. So this one's going to be kind of a lengthy tutorial. I'm going to start out explaining how I took the shots and back it up with some video, so you'll be able to check that out, and then we'll go into the tutorial itself. This is also kind of a breakdown, so I moved through the tutorial pretty quickly. If you get lost, you can pause the video or rewind the video. Just make sure that you try and keep up because, like I said, I will move pretty fast. In the description down below, I've also added the timestamps for when the tutorial actually begins. So if you want to just skip right to it, you can do that now. The audio for the video part of this tutorial is going to be kind of bad because I totally forgot to bring my Zoom with me when I went to record this. So just kind of bear with us. Once the tutorial begins, the audio quality will be a lot better. So yeah, cool beans.
Okay, so this is what we're doing. Had the Manfrotto and the Lilliput, the TC80. So this is basically our setup for our shot, and I want to make sure that the focus is as good as we can get. So we'll zoom in and check the focus. It's pretty decent on the Lilliput. And there we go. So we got 130, 2.8, ISO 5. We want a really crispy dynamic shot. So I'm going to change some of this. Manual, that's fine because it's exactly where we want. Go to ISO 100. Keep it white fluorescent, spot center. Yeah, it all looks pretty good. So let's take it down to get it just about 1 over. Grab our TC and hit it. As you can see, it has pretty decent depth. The foreground's kind of blurry and the stairs go out. I don't really like the angle though, so I'm gonna adjust things slightly. I've changed the tripod slightly, just enough to give it a little bit straighter of a pattern here. So let's take a remote, hit it. And as you can see, it's better. The line of the stairs is centered, and if I really need to nitpick it, I can fix the crop later in Lightroom. Alrighty, so I'm gonna prepare backdrop for this. Move this out of the way. I'm going to lay on the box and set a self timer with this here. Yeah. So I'm gonna set that up real quick. All I will have to do is hit this start stop and it's pretty much good to go. So let's try and get this photo. We had to lower the tripod a little bit. The other one was just not working out. So we're gonna try this height instead. Here's the settings I'm working with. So we had to move the beauty dish over. The box was just a little bit too blown out on the wrong side of my hand, so we switched it, and I switched my stance over a little bit. Let's see. So these are the photos that we ended up with. As you can see, it's a little bit different than the other side here. So, and my body angle was a lot better this time around, so might work out a little bit better here.
Welcome back to the tutorial part of this, where I'm going to show you what we did with the footage that we took. So we're going to take this photo and put it in this photo. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to grab my lasso and I'm going to get as close as I can, because as you can see, the green is kind of dynamic and we got a lot of highlights and whatnot, and that's not really going to work for our key. All we're going to do is duplicate the selection here by hitting Command J. It's going to pull it out. We're going to add a new layer in between, add it with a 50% gray by hitting Shift Delete. By getting the gray in there, we can see how bad the spill is of the green once we start masking this off and getting rid of the green portions of this photo. So we're going to come over and grab our background eraser tool and make sure that the settings are on sampling once and discontiguous. What discontiguous does is when you sample a color by simply hovering over and clicking down on your mouse, it will start to erase all of the similar hues around that area. And why we want to use discontiguous is because when we're dealing with hair, there are certain parts or particles that are between the hairs themselves that we really want to get in there and take out. Another thing that we can do is we can use the paint bucket tool, and we put the mode to clear. And by putting it on clear, what it will do is it will clear the color of the pixels that are throughout the image. You have to be careful that it doesn't mess up your lines or your curves, because it's a pretty powerful tool. And if your tolerance is too high, it'll just rip up your selection. Now what we'll do is we will Command select the image. So hit Command and click on the little thumbnail on the layer. And we're going to go over and hit Select, Modify, Smooth, and 5 pixels looks good. That'll just kind of smooth out your selection. And then Modify, Contract, 1 pixel should be good. And what we'll want to do is hit Select Inverse, and we just want to hit Clear a couple times, and that should clean up our selection just a bit, make it a little bit tighter and a lot smoother. Fix a couple little problem areas if you have them. Once you're done cleaning up your selection, we want to hit Select and Inverse, and we want to go ahead and make a mask on that layer. And we're going to choose that mask so that we can clean up any of the problems that we missed. You can select brush tool, and you want to make sure that your mode is on overlay. What that will do is, depending on what color you have for your brush, whether it be black or white, it will only remove that type in your mask. We're going to fast forward through this, as this again takes some time. So just make sure that your mat is nice and clean. I want to slow it down for the hair. When you're cleaning up the hair, you want to make sure that there are a couple areas of gray, because what that's going to do is that's going to help with transparency and kind of make it look more natural. If you have very sharp features for the hair, it will make it look very fake. When we clean it up with the color correction tool, it will fix the green that's showing through the transparency. So don't worry about that right now. Just make sure that when you're dealing with hair that you leave somewhat of a nice gray opacity so that you can worry about cleaning it up later. It will look 10 times better, trust me. Once we're done, go ahead and hit the layer, and you can see the selection looks pretty clean. So you'll notice that there's still a lot of green in the selection, and we have a couple areas that aren't as perfect as we would like it. Remember, we are going to composite this, and the image itself is not going to be that big. So if there's a little bit of ratty edges, it's not going to be the end of the world for this particular project. If you're doing something for a professional gig, you will probably want to spend a lot of time cleaning this up before you take it to print. Now we want to start working on the color of the hair, so we're going to hit our brush tool. We want to lock the transparency of the layer that we're working with and make sure that we choose the layer itself and not the mask. And we want to select the mode and put it to color. And then simply choose a color that matches somewhat well and go over the hair with it, and it will remove all of the green. It's going to take a little bit of trial and error to make sure that you get the hair color correct. You might have to go back and forth and change the hardness of your brush, change the size, whatnot. Keep playing with the eyedropper tool and try and get the best, most realistic hair color. Then for the rest of the body, you want to just eyedrop certain areas and just kind of clean up the parts that the green would be showing through on. This will fix the green luminosity and change the hues to a more original color. You'll want to go through your entire image and do this. I'm going to fast forward again through part of this because this just takes a lot of time as well. And like I said, it's trial and error, so it's going to be something that you're going to want to do on your own anyway. I'd say that looks pretty good. Now that we have the image that we want, we're just going to go ahead and hold Command and click the mask layer, and it will select our entire image, and Command copy it. So Command C, and we're going to paste it into our other image by using Command V. We're going to be working with our previous image in this image now, and we're going to play around with some things and try and make it look kind of cool. The first thing we want to do now that we have this image in here is just kind of put it in an area that we want to see it as a final result. And then what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the layer, and then we're going to hit Filter, Blur, and Radial Blur, and we want to hit the blur to zoom and choose best quality. Hit OK. Might take a little while for it to process depending on your computer. Move the layer that has the zoom underneath the layer that you pasted in. And we're gonna Command T transform it and pull it back a little bit, make it look a little skewed so it looks like it's coming from the back of me and not directly through or under me. And we're also going to use warp and just kind of change it around a little bit because we want it to look different. We don't want it to look exactly the same as the overlay image. So once we have that, we want to add an outer glow on the top layer, our original layer. And we're going to use black and put the blend mode on normal and change the size a little bit and bring down the opacity. We just want to give a little bit more strength to the legs and feet and make it look like he's propelling, or I'm propelling for that matter. But now we have a problem with the hand. The outer glow on my hand just doesn't look right. So what I'm going to do is add a layer mask, and then I'm going to copy layer 1 and add a new layer, and then I'm going to merge the newest layer 1 copy with the brand new layer that I just made. And now remove the effects on the original layer 1, clear layer style. And delete the layer mask on layer 1 and add a layer mask to the newly created layer, layer 2. The reason we did this is because I want to leave the outer glow on the bottom part of the image, but I do not want the outer glow on the upper arm part of the image. And by moving the layers around and merging them, it makes it a lot easier to manipulate in a timely fashion without making additional masks or layers. This is the quickest way possible. So I apologize if it seems a little bit more difficult than your average Photoshop layers. Now we're going to select the layer thumbnail. So we're going to duplicate layer 2 and make a new layer, and then merge the layer 2 copy with layer 3. We're going to have a whole new layer from that. And we want to select that part of the thumbnail by holding Command. We want to go to Select, Modify, and Feather. We'll just hit Clear or your delete button a couple times, and that will just kind of clean up the edging. Now what I want to do is I want to select the background and duplicate the layer so we have a background copy. And then I'm going to select all of the layers and group them together using Command G. And we're going to start adding our adjustments to make the image pop. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a channel mixer, hit monochrome, and drop the opacity. Just try and get it to where it looks like what you want it to look like. There's no rule here. Then we're going to add a gradient map and drop the gradient map to soft light and drop the opacity as well. Then we're going to click through the gradient maps and just kind of choose which one looks best or fits best for what we're going to do. You might have to go through all of them. Maybe the first one that you click on just looks the best. It just depends on the look that you're going for. Once we've chosen our gradient map, we might want to fix the opacity just a little bit more. Then we're going to add some curves just to pull it out, make it a little bit more punchy, more contrasty. Just make a nice little curve here, just play with the settings, see what looks best for your image. And let's add a second channel mixer, monochrome, and bring it down. The reason I add a second is because I have a little bit more control over having two than just having one. If I go back and start messing with the original channel mixer, it might throw off all of the other settings, so this kind of gets me in a situation where I can dial it in a little bit better. So sometimes two of the same adjustments are better than just one. It just depends on what you're doing. Now I want to add a levels, and I'm just going to pull down the whites a little bit, bring up the mids. Just get it to whatever looks best in your opinion. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the layers in the group except for the background copy, and I'm just going to kind of move around the layers to see, to position my body a little bit better so that it looks much more realistic, and move it away from the stairs a little bit so it looks like I'm actually flying and not just laying on the stairs in a strange fashion. So now I want to add a drop shadow on the layer 1 copy. So we'll double click the layer, hit drop shadow, put it about 76 degrees and bring the distance up to perhaps 1000. That looks pretty good. So now let's duplicate that layer and select the original layer 1 copy and make a new layer and merge those two layers. And then the layer 1 copy 2, we're just gonna clear the layer style. Once again, This is not the most efficient way of doing this. This just happens to be the way that I do it as quickly as possible. The reason we did that is because our bottommost layer is going to be the shadow layer, and we're going to move and adjust that around, and we want to add a mask to that. And we're just going to choose brush, make sure that it's in normal mode, and just kind of brush away part of the shadow. So you might have to change the opacity up and down, maybe a larger, smaller brush, and just kind of clean this up a little bit, make it look more like a shadow. Now bring the opacity all the way up and make it a little larger, and what we want to do is we want to mask out the entire top selection, so my entire body, because we're going to move just the shadow and we don't want my body coming with it. So move the shadow down the stairs a little bit, just kind of put it in a more believable location based on the lighting from my hand. Brush out a little bit more of the shadow. Make it look like a more believable cast. Now let's duplicate the background copy, and we're going to add a high pass to get it looking a little bit more punchy with more HDR style. So we'll go to Filter, Other, High Pass, and we want to make sure that there's lots of contrast. So change the pixel radius and just see what's kind of best. Higher is better for this situation. Then set your blending mode to overlay, and as you can see, it's really sharp. So bring down the opacity and just kind of play with it until you get something that feels right, to where it's not too fake looking given the circumstances. Let's fix the knuckle a little bit by choosing the original layer 1, and we're going to throw a mask on it, and then bring the opacity of the brush back up and just kind of start cleaning up the edges of the hand, because the stroke on the hand is just a little bit too unbelievable. It just doesn't look like it belongs there, so we want to just kind of clean it up. Now for our final touch, we're going to make a new layer, and then we're going to duplicate layer 1 and merge it with the new layer, and we want to add a filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and just kind of find something that looks pretty decent. Then we're going to put that layer above almost everything else, and as you can see, it's kind of blurry, so we want to mask that out. And then we're just going to brush over the areas that we don't want blurry, and which is basically the head and the hand. We want the feet and the body to remain kind of blurry. And that's pretty much it. And now all we'll do is import it back into Lightroom, add our keywords, and kick it out with the logo, and we're good to go. And that's about it for this tutorial. Sorry it was so long. It's a involved process. This is not for the faint of heart. This is a pretty difficult tutorial. It was hard to put together, very time consuming. Even compositing this took quite a while. Hopefully you guys will go out and try something similar and learn something from this. This is not the best way to do something like this, or even be the workflow of other people. This is just what works best for me. I'm kind of lazy when it comes to doing Photoshop editing. I go through as quickly as possible and just make the image happen. I don't worry about naming layers or anything like that unless it's a paid client project. If it's for myself, I just do it as quickly as possible, something similar to this. So hopefully you learned something and can apply this to your Photoshop skills. And if you didn't, please give us a thumbs up anyway. Awesome. Thank you guys. We will see you next time. Bye.